Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
6:07 now. It's O'Connor and Company on this Monday morning, a busy one at that, 14th day of July. We got a lot to talk about. At 7:05, Joe DeGenevo will be our guest. At 8:05, Stuart Whitson running for that special election, Virginia 11. And then at 8:35, Susan Crabtree, the one-year anniversary of the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. And she's got some reflections on that and some new breaking bombshells about that and about the some people got promoted after that? At the Secret Service, no one fired. We talked last week about the suspensions, but nobody gets fired. It's like, as I mentioned, if you're the fry cook at McDonald's and the fries come out burned, you can have trouble.
Right.
It's a problem. But at the Secret Service, you just get a suspension. All right, we'll get into all of that. It's Larry O'Connor. Julie Gunlock's back from vacation. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
I'm so glad you're here for me to try to get into trouble. As we talk about the
first hour.
Extraordinary events of the first of Friday afternoon, when it was leaked that FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino, former talk show host here on WMAL, was in a shouting match with Attorney General Pam Bondi at the White House on Wednesday. Now, this story got leaked, and it got leaked to mostly conservative media. All right, that's an important. I always tell you that when stories are leaked, who leaked them and who they leaked them to is critically important. All right. And it seemed like as soon as this story started, I believe Laura Loomer was the first person to have the story. But after that, Mary Margaret Olahan of the Daily Signal had it. Wait, she's at the Daily Wire now. I can't keep the Daily straight.
I know.
Which Daily is she at now? And almost immediately, conservative influencers on social media, I'm talking about people like Megyn Kelly and Charlie Kirk and Benny Johnson and Steve Bannon, they all seem to have the exact same story with the exact same narrative. Pam Bondi must be fired. All of them, all at once. Mm-hmm. That was the story. And this, of course, arises from a topic that we were discussing all week last week about the mixed messages coming out of the Justice Department and the FBI having to do with the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. As you know, on Monday, there was a memo that was leaked to Axios. See, now that's all. And I said at the time, the fact that this got leaked to Axios is part of the story here. Who's leaking this and why to Axios? The memo, which did not have a signature on it, had both the FBI and the Justice Department's letterhead. And it said the Epstein case is closed. No list, nothing more to see here, move on. And later in the week, they released the video. The video that Dan Bongino said that he had seen. He gave an interview to Fox and Friends a month ago, and he said, we're going to release this video of the jail cell, proving that no one went in or out of that room. But it turns out there was a minute missing of the tape. Now, Pam Bondi said that that's because it's an old system at that jail, and every night at midnight they reset the tape, so that minute is missing every single day. Apparently, things reached a head on Wednesday. Big fight between Bondi and Bongino over how this thing has been handled. And Bongino walked out, basically, stormed out after shouting. And let's face it, I think, as I said, I'm not going to get in trouble. I'm going to do what I always do, which is give you my opinion. I purposely don't try to pick fights with other conservatives, especially conservative talk show hosts. I think it's boring for the audience. As you know, there is a little bit of a history there. Bongino did pick a fight with me years ago. I ignored him on the air. He kept coming after me multiple times. That's fine. He does his thing for his audience. I do my thing for my audience. I think listeners to this radio station hate it when people they like are fighting with each other. Yeah, there's no reason to do it.
We always feel like it's mom and dad are fighting. Yeah.
Right. And so but at the same time, I have to objectively describe this story and give you my opinion. And the fact of the matter is, Dan Bongino getting upset and frustrated and flying off the handle and shouting at people that he works with and threatening to quit is not out of character. Okay, he's a bit of a hothead, and I don't think I'm not saying that in a way to disparage him. It's just a way to describe him. It's his brand. It's who he is. Watch his podcast. I mean, He is a hothead. And I have no doubt that he was frustrated. Knowing the media the way Dan knows the media, this thing was, in fact, mishandled. Now, I want to go back to all those influencers for a moment, the ones who immediately jumped on this story. They have two things in common. One thing is they were colleagues of Dan Bongino, and I have no doubt had direct access to Dan. If Dan wanted to text or send a message on Signal or whatever they wanted to send, if Dan wanted to get a story out and a message out and have these guys take the ball and run with it, it would have been really easy for that to happen. And it is remarkable that all of them at the same time had the exact same story with the exact same lines. Pam Bondi must go. That's one thing all of those MAGA influencers online and podcasters have in common. The other thing they have in common, they were all screwed by Pam Bondi. Because you'll remember, several months ago, Pam Bondi called them all to the White House, and they all got big binders that they held up for the cameras. And they were all showing off that, look, we were the first ones to get the Epstein files. Look at this. And I remember at the time, I was grossed out by that because, I mean,
So was I. Yeah.
As important as the Epstein story is, I think we lose sight of the fact sometimes because they were all gleeful and they were all like, yeah, we're finally going to get those Democrats who are on the, and all those rich and powerful millionaires who are on the list and all that stuff. And I get it. I want those people to see justice too. But we lose sight of the fact that we're talking about little girls here, little girls, the victims. And acting with such glee and sort of celebratory.
Yeah, it was.
It was just.
It was
weird.
a very bad
It's
look.
gross.
Yes. Yeah.
And then it turns out that those binders that Bondi handed out were nothing.
Nothing.
There was nothing new in there.
Redacted.
And it was information that had already been released.
Yes.
And there was nothing. And so all of those influencers looked really bad.
They did, actually. They really did. I mentioned it on Twitter. I know you did too.
That's right. And so the second they had, so the drumbeat has been growing for Pam Bondi because she does a lot of Fox News appearances and she says a lot of stuff, but people want to see results. Now, that said, you could make the case that Pam Bondi's actually been doing quite a bit. All of those wins that Trump has won in the federal courts and at the Supreme Court, that all happens through the Justice Department, right? The prosecutions of illegal immigrants who are being rounded up, that's the Justice Department has a hand in all of that, and there's a lot going on. That said, when you make promises and you spend years saying that Epstein is a pedophile and he's connected to rich and powerful people.
And you do these stunts with influencers and then essentially make them look bad. Not great optics.
Yeah. And so I didn't think everything came to a head on Friday, and it was like, that's it. Pam Bondi has to go. Pam Bondi has to go. And Bongino, we were told, left work, didn't show up on Friday, and it was like he was saying, all right, it's either her or me, which is not the kind of thing that you do to any president, let alone the president.
There was also a weird tweet from Kash Patel. So he said, it's been nice. He didn't sign off, but it sounded a little like a sign off. People were wondering. He's like, no matter what happens, it's been great serving. It made people a little nervous.
Oh, I didn't see that as a sign off.
I know some people did. Some people were like,
let me just speak. Let's bring the Kash Patel into this because late into the afternoon or evening, it was suggested by these same people who were leaking stories and saying they had insight. All of them said, I've confirmed this. Okay, who have you confirmed it with exactly? And the only answer is Dan Bongino. Honestly, because it's unless they confirmed it with Pam Bondi, and I don't think any of these influencers were talking to Pam Bondi. And one of them came out and said, Kash Patel has now said that if Pam Bondi is not fired, and he will leave with Dan Bongino. And suddenly everyone started taking that story and running with it. Steve Bannon was down at the Charlie Kirk Turning Point USA event down in Tampa, and he reported that and said, that's it, Kash Patel's going to leave too unless Pam Bondi's gone. And then on Saturday, Kash Patel actually said something on social media. We'll share that with you in a moment and continue to unpack this convoluted story because ultimately Donald Trump has the final word here, and he did put out a statement about it, and it seems to have calmed this whole thing down. We think. We're not sure. But the dynamics of this is fascinating, and I think that we need to pour into it a little bit further, which we will in a moment.
Folks, you're going to see a lot of names on that. The Epstein client list, I believe, based on what I've heard from sources and the story I just told you, basically, is going to rock the political world. There's a reason they're hiding it.
Dan Bongino on his podcast there talking openly about the client list, and he said, based on sources that I have, and I said this on Friday, now Mr. Bongino is the deputy director of the FBI, and he had sources at the time who told him that there was, in fact, a client list and that the names on the client list were bombshells. It's incumbent on him now that the official word from the FBI is that there was no client list. He needs to reveal who those sources were. I'm sorry, that's just the way these things work. Yeah. He was lied to. And in turn, Mr. Bongino passed that lie on to his listeners, our audience.
That's right.
So,
I agree.
One of two things is true. Either they lied to Dan Bongino then when he did his podcast, and there is no client list, as the FBI is now saying, or the FBI is now lying. Either way, we need answers on that. And I'm with people. The dynamics of this are remarkable because... Well, let's first. Here's Dan Bongino now is the deputy director of the FBI just 6 weeks ago on Fox News.
You said Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. People don't believe it.
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, you know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
He killed himself. You want me to? I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
There you go. That's both Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. One wonders, was the fight on Wednesday at the White House that we're hearing about now, and apparently Chief of Staff Susie Wiles was there, and it should also be noted, as we mentioned on Friday, that Susie Wiles and Pam Bondi go back many, 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 many years politically.
Yep.
Susie Wiles ran Pam Bondi's elections for Attorney General in Florida both times, I believe. And Susie Wiles is the most powerful person in Washington, D.C. after Donald Trump. I think she's more powerful than J.D. Vance is right now, politically, in terms of the Trump administration. 100%. And so if the ultimatum is, it's Pam Bondi or me, I think that, we'll get to Donald Trump's statement in a minute because it looks like it's going to be Pam Bondi. You said Kash Patel put out a statement when all the chips were falling and all of this was going on and people were saying that Kash Patel would leave as well. Here's Saturday, midday, Kash Patel says the conspiracy theories just aren't true, never have been. It is an honor to serve the President of the United States, and I'll continue to do so for as long as he calls me, which doesn't sound like a sign-off to me. That sounds like I'm not going anywhere. Don't believe any of these people who say that I'm threatening to leave because I have no intention of leaving.
Right. Look, the problem is that before they were at the Justice Department, these two men had online shows. Obviously, Kash also, I think he did a lot on I'm not sure what platform but he also was always doing interviews, and both of these men. And maybe they didn't have all the facts, but definitely suggested that there was more to the Epstein list, that the list existed, that his death was fishy, and now they are the officials who have to walk all of that back. Yeah. It is enormously frustrating for their fans, for their followers, and it is enormously frustrating for them. From a reputational standpoint, and they are having to navigate this. It is incredibly messy.
It is, and it's messy and it's awful because this comes after a 2-week stretch of President Trump quite possibly having one of the best periods of any president in modern history.
Yes.
On Friday he was down with the victims of the Texas floods. It was a really important event. Nobody covered it because everyone was covering this. Did you know that on Friday it was announced that the month of June the federal Treasury had a surplus for the first time in a decade, and no one covered it because everyone was covering this? You don't do this to the President of the United States. And here's the problem with the dynamic of this, Julie. If I say what I just said and said this is hurting Trump and this is not good politically, I'm told that I'm defending a child molester.
I know. I know.
I'm told that so you don't care about pedophilia? What are you talking about? I don't care about pedophilia.
Right.
What does that even mean? And I don't understand everybody who says, well, Dan knows the truth about Jeffrey Epstein and he's trying to stand on his principles. Okay, then I'm sorry. As far as I know, according to Dan Bongino, the truth is there was no Epstein list. There's nothing to release. Right. He killed himself, and there's no scandal. So what exactly do you mean? I don't think Dan Bongino has expressed that he's upset that there's a cover-up. He's upset at the way this was handled. And he should be upset about the way this was handled. Right. But as far as the facts of the case, as far as I know, Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, and Pam Bondi all have said the exact same thing about this story, and no one has said otherwise.
Yes.
So when everyone says, hey, Dan is doing this because he's got principles and he's trying to get to the truth and he wants justice against Jeffrey Epstein.
He's the one saying there wasn't anything there.
Thank you.
Exactly.
I have seen nothing from Mr. Bongino or Mr. Patel or Ms. Bondi that suggests otherwise. And I don't want that to be true, by the way. I think it's bull as well. But we can only operate with the facts we're given.
You know, I don't like this idea that, we trust these two individuals. At one point when they were saying there is, I know where the bodies are buried, right? And now when they turn around and say, look, actually, there aren't any bodies. I do wish a little bit that maybe they could come out and say, maybe we fueled those conspiracy theories a little bit.
There needs to be way more transparency.
But Larry, honestly, I was on vacation, but of course I'm addicted to Twitter. And you were one of the few people to say, ultimately, this is bad for Trump. Now, everybody seemed to forget that. You mentioned those two great news stories, and you're absolutely right. Nobody was covering this. It was a massive distraction. It continues to be a massive distraction. It's a bunch of egos floating around D.C., right? It really does distract from some incredible good news out there.
And
so
Chris
frustrating.
DeGaulle, our friend Chris DeGaulle, literally a friend and also a radio host. And I think there is we joke about podcasts a lot, and I have a podcast. I do, but it's a very different business than radio. It's funny. Somebody characterized podcasting as, yes, all the fun of talk radio without any of the quality control or standards.
Or traffic.
And it's true. We are held to a different standard when we're on the radio. And Stigall has said this. He said, there are a lot of media people who think because they had a microphone at Trump rallies that they're now responsible for Trump's election and can demand he do what they say. The crowds weren't for you guys. You were allowed to share his stage, but that's it. Hosting a podcast isn't leading anything. Yes, and that's the Bannon phenomenon. It's the Kirk phenomenon. It's it's even the Megyn Kelly phenomenon. This whole, there's a lot more to governing than just getting the crowd rallied.
Yeah, and Megyn Kelly is much better about reporting the news and not suggesting that she's in charge of anything. This bullying that's going on among some of these people that we've mentioned this morning, and I think Stigall nails it there, really does apply to people who have now found positions, I think, within the Trump administration, and again are distracting from the real news. And really, the mainstream media loves this. They love it.
Yeah. And by the way, by saying there's more in the news that we should be focusing on, that doesn't mean we don't care about Epstein. We spent tons of time on Epstein.
Yes.
But until I see something else from anyone officially, the players here involved are squabbling amongst themselves about media, not about the facts of the case. But keep that in mind as you see this play out. We've got Joe DeGenevieve coming up at 7:05. We'll ask him about this stuff as well.
Coming up, we are going to talk about yet another story that's been sort of memory hold, and not a lot of people are talking about it, certainly with the distractions that Larry and I just talked about this past week. But it is the anniversary of the Trump assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania. Still so many questions remain from that assassination attempt. And then at 8:35, we will talk to Susan Crabtree about that. But we'll get it teed up for you in this next hour. Keep it here at 6:30.
WMAL FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. WMAL. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:36, a very busy Monday morning. We actually have much more to say about that last story we discussed. Again, President Trump took to Truth Social, put a long statement out there basically saying, I don't like this. Pam Bondi's got my support. She's not going anywhere. Kash Patel has my support. He's not going anywhere. He didn't mention Dan Bongino, but he was asked about Dan Bongino on the tarmac yesterday as he was returning back from the FIFA championship, and he said, I like Dan, done a show plenty of times. He's doing a great job. So he basically says, get to work, everybody. We got a lot going on here in this administration, and we need you to focus on it. As I said, 7:05, Joe DeGenova will join us to discuss it even further. 8:05, Stuart Whitson, and then at 8:35, Susan Crabtree on the anniversary of the Trump assassination attempt, which we're going to discuss right now. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Unless you want to button that up with anything else, Julie. We have
No. You buttoned it up perfectly.
It was 1 year ago yesterday when our world was rocked. This is what it sounded like in Butler, Pennsylvania. Take a listen.
And then the worst president in the history of our country took over. And look what happened to our country. Probably 20 million people. And, you know, that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
Oh.
Still freaks me out.
Me too.
Still freaks me out. Freaks me out that we still have so many questions unanswered about this.
I know. So little interest from the mainstream media, too.
Oh, in fact, we had contempt from the mainstream media. This is that afternoon on ABC This Week. They broke into coverage for live analysis. They had George Stephanopoulos and Martha Raddatz, and very quickly the conversation turned to this.
Of
course. President Trump and his supporters have contributed to this violent rhetoric as well.
Well, absolutely, George. We were just looking back this morning at some of the things that former President Trump has said. He warned last March of potential death and destruction if he were charged by the Manhattan District Attorney. Our country is being destroyed as they tell us to be peaceful. Trump in January warned of bedlam in the country if the criminal charges against him succeeded.
This was as President Trump was in the hospital still getting treated, and we still had no information about the assassin. And they said, well, yeah, you know, he was asking for it.
Yeah, there was that, but then started weeks of, or rather days of, it was just debris from the glass.
Right.
And I love that, like, well, what broke the glass? Like, you know, it just was insane.
And it turns out it wasn't glass. It was, in fact, a bullet that grazed him. But, yeah. CNN headline, Secret Service rushes Trump off stage after he falls at rally.
I know. I'd forgotten about that.
CNN, Trump injured in incident at Pennsylvania rally.
Incident.
NBC News, Secret Service rushes Trump off stage after popping noises heard at Pennsylvania rally. Washington Post, Trump escorted away after loud noises at Pennsylvania rally. They hate us. They absolutely hate us, these people. That's how the media covered it. And then a week later, just stopped covering it completely.
Totally.
Even with the vile contempt, they set that aside as well. And we still, as I said, don't know anything really
about the shooting,
about this assassin. And that's quite disturbing, too.
I just very quickly also, you know, the assassin is dead, obviously, but his parents are alive and walking around. And there's been no interviews with them. Now, there have been sort of these man on the street, like they've, you know, I guess for lack of a better word, ambush, you know, where a reporter will go over to and it's a right-wing reporter always, so someone on the right trying to get answers. And, you know, they might be walking from a store to their car, but that's it. And of course, these people say nothing. We know nothing.
We know nothing. And in fact, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett in an interview last week said, you know, the Trump's assassin was a MAGA guy, which where's she getting that from? But that's the thing.
I don't know.
When there's a lack of any information, you can just say stuff like that and people will believe it. Meanwhile, last week, Chairman Chuck Grassley of the Judiciary Committee in the Senate released a report. He commissioned it, a GAO report, including senior Secret Service officials, saying they received, listen to this now, prior to the July 13th rally, senior-level Secret Service officials became aware of a threat to then-former President Trump. The information was not specific to the July 13th rally or gunmen. Nonetheless, due to the Secret Service siloed practice for sharing classified threat information, Secret Service and local law enforcement personnel central to developing site security plans for the rally were unaware of the threat. So two things here. First of all, siloed. Isn't that what we heard before 9/11?
Right. I
when
believe
we
I was on that
spent
committee.
millions and millions and millions of dollars to stop the siloing of classified information about threats.
Let me say a phrase and see if you recognize it. Connect the dots.
Yes.
How many times do we hear connect the dot? Where's the dot connecting going on? What, you mean there's still silos?
Why are we siloing I thought we had intel offices specifically designed to stop the siloing of information, especially a threat and assassination.
In fact,
that's number one. But number two,
they moved the Secret Service to DHS out of Treasury in order to help with the siloing.
Number two, if this threat did connect, I mean, do we know that this threat connected to the actual assassination attempt? And if so he wasn't a lone gunman? We actually knew of some kind of ongoing threat. We know the Iranians had assassins that they were trying to employ against Donald Trump. And what do we know about Mr. Crooks? We still don't know hardly anything.
We know he had a lot of phones.
Why did he... If someone said, why did the assassin try to murder Donald Trump on July 13th, I could not answer that question. A year later, I couldn't tell you. Do you? Do you know? Do we have the answer to that question?
No.
I didn't think so. Susan Crabtree has been reporting on this. She's got quite a bit on the Secret Service and what went down there and the suspensions and some surprising people who were negligent that day that got promoted. And we'll give you details about that coming up at 8:35. Right now it's 6:43. A little bit more here on the assassination attempt. According to Susan Crabtree, one of the people who signed off on the Butler security plan the day before the Butler rally was none other than Sean Curran. Now, he's currently he's been named the director of the Secret Service. He had been the head of the campaign detail and is somebody who was Donald Trump's sort of most trusted Secret Service agent at the time. And that's apparently, according to Susan Crabtree's reporting, the person who gave the ultimate sign-off on all of this. That's including the perimeter issues with monitoring that building where the assassin did perch the day of the attempts.
This is really great. So we now know we have stovepiping going on that, sort of post 9/11, the lessons weren't learned and the changes weren't, they just continued despite moving the Secret Service from Treasury over to DHS in order to cut down on the stovepiping. We now still have stovepiping and really disturbing news about Curran. I really worry about our president. I really worry about our vice president, and these latest reports are not encouraging.
And we'll talk to Susan Crabtree about this and more related to the one-year anniversary of the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. That's coming up with Susan Crabtree at Real Clear Politics at 8:35. Right now it's 6:52.